Hey everybody, someone in our community posted an observation about conditioning and where it comes from. And I'm going to read it out, and I think we can go a little bit further with it, which what makes it so juicy for us. So here we go. Something became clearer this morning when I awoke. It was that there are no them that condition us. So the realization is that there is no other person that actually creates the conditioning of this mind body, that creates what this mind body believes. I used to think that my parents did most of my early conditioning, but of course they didn't. This body mind creates the conditions, yes, based on its environment, but the actual data it absorbs is its own. This was a wow. I thought that if my parents had conditioned me, then the same would be true for my children, and I had felt guilty. But just as I had no control over my parenting, they had no control over what was accepted as true. Yeah, so this is really interesting, isn't it? That if we think about it, this is really getting into the heart of all behavior. So there's conception, and then 9 months later there's a baby, and there is an ongoing process of interaction between the genetic, innate, existent programming of the baby and the environment, and that interaction, which is driven really by the baby brain, the baby inclination, the baby's drive to absorb all information it possibly can about the world, really in order to survive, in order to navigate, in order to find out how things work. There's an innate curiosity, isn't there? And so what we're considering within this conversation about reality and self is that interaction between the existent program that the baby is born with and its environment, bit by bit, layer by layer, belief by belief, association by association, meaning by meaning, starts to create the entire understanding of what is real within that mind-body system. So the idea of a self, of a self-identity starts to form, and the idea of a reality that surrounds that identity starts to form. And that foundational system, that foundational understanding, dictates all behavior, all words. It's largely subconscious, isn't it? There's no undoing that. There's no person inside the baby's mind deciding, shall I believe this or shall I believe that? No, it's just automatically acquired, isn't it? This whole program, and who knows really by what mechanism some things are acquired and some things are completely disregarded. But nevertheless, through this interaction, with infinite bits of information, a largely subconscious, learned, conditioned program is established, which then goes on to dictate the entire way the reality of self and other appears, and therefore all behavior, all actions, all reactions, all inferences, all meanings, everything, the whole lot is a program. Now, this lovely person in our community is quite right. We can in a way blame our parents, can't we? Like it's their fault that I'm like this. But actually, parents are equally programmed, aren't they? Really, what we're seeing in this is that there's no choices, there's no chooser, there's no doer, there's no free will. There's just billions of mind-body systems interacting with each other, influencing each other's programs constantly. And there's no one inside any of these programs deciding what gets taken on as truth, what gets ignored, what's ridiculous, what becomes, the lens through which everything is viewed and assessed. There's no decider, there's no believer, and yet there's beliefs being acquired, there's decisions being made all the time. So the listener's absolutely right. There is no one is doing the program. First of all, no one's doing that voluntarily. There's no decider that is either providing the conditioning or taking it on. It's just happening all the time, happening. And so so blame, self-blame, blame of others goes out of the window in this conversation, completely out of the window. And in fact, we start to see how all behavior is really the product of understanding. It's the best any mind-body system has got, given what's believed, given what's been programmed, given the reality in which, the apparent reality of self and other, which is an acquired reality, isn't it? It's not actual reality. It's a projection from the conditioning. Given that, all behavior makes sense. All behavior is optimum, given that reality that's being believed. So there is no space for blame. If there's no believer right at the origin of that baby and what it acquires, then we have to follow the logic through and say there's no justification for blame whatsoever. Now, this is the big caveat here. So the lovely listener says, just as I thought that they had conditioned me, then the same would be true for my children, and I had felt guilty. But just as I had no control over my parenting, they had no control over what was accepted as true. Now, there's no space for guilt, there's no space for blame or self-blame, and there is infinite space for witnessing behavior. And this is something I've called no self accountability. And I think it's absolutely critical in a conversation about self, reality, behavior, because our behavior is really the external, our reactions, our words, our emotions, our habits, our addictions, our responses is really the external manifestation of the internal program. So the program is invisible and subconscious largely, but the minute an action comes out, or a reaction or a word, that is our first indication of what's being believed, isn't it? Of the reality that is giving rise to that action. And when the mind shifts from identification with the situation, with the actions, like this is real, this is how I am, this is how they are, this action is necessary because they're like that. When it shifts out of that and instead just witnesses what is being said, what is being done. And that's a radical shift. That's really the shift of enlightenment, we could say, from identification to witnessing everything that arises out of this mind body. That's now information that can go back into the system. And it's valuable information because it's really showing fears, it's showing shames, it's showing insecurities, it's showing everything that is attributed to this identity, it's showing how other people are believed to be. It's completely revelatory. And when we're no longer lost in identification as the doer, which is such an illusion, and instead the mind settles back into the truth of the witnessing space, then behavior, including our behavior to our children, maybe especially, is like a gold mine of information. And in that space of no self-accountability, there can be absolute sanity in the sense that there's no doer. So self-blame, defensiveness, justification, self-criticism, all of that, total waste of time. And all it is really is more and more obsession about me, really. But when there's no self, so there's no identification with the actions, but there is accountability. So these actions are coming from this program. And what I am, consciousness, intelligence, temporarily localized in this body, animating this body, observing this body, perceiving this body, can notice, and so all this data now comes back into the system, and we start to, in a way, as I see it, this is really how the system gets upgraded. It's why our original conditioning is not our destiny, because now with this information, this in a way, this visibility of the internal program, we can really ask the question, is this true? Do I really know that? Am I really like that? Are they really like that? Is this is this behavior in alignment with the deepest known truth of love and intelligence, consciousness, wholeness? And now what we've got is a really precious feedback loop, in which, and it's humbling. There's great humility in this, to witness the behavior, know that it comes from a conditioned program, and use that information, to be open to that information, for that program to change, for it to upgrade, really, for it to align with what's true. So when we're saying, I had no control over my parenting, in a way, when we start saying like that, in a way, what that is an identified mind. I'm identified as the doer. I'm the doer, and I had no control over how I parented. Which really we're seeing, it's not that I had no control, it's that there was no I in the first place to have control. Do you see the difference? It's subtle but enormous. And now there's no self-accountability. There's just accountability for all behaviors from the moment of birth, really. And we can listen to people telling us the impact of our behavior on them with great humility. We're not, it's not like a sort of get out clause, really. We're not saying, well, I had no control, I'm not the doer. It's not that. That's sort of like a passive pretend spirituality. It's really saying, yeah, all my actions, all the actions from this body mind came from what was being believed in the moment, what was being defended, what the fear was, what the insecurity was. And as the witnessing space now, as intelligence, as love, I am taking full accountability for it. So tell me everything that I've done that has had an impact on you. Tell me, so that I can make amends now, or I can put things right, or we can find a new way forward, or we can together end these centuries of conditioning that have created the programs as they are right now. And that's freedom. That's the ultimate space of change and transformation. Yeah, it's deeply humbling, but it's sane and it's true. Yeah, so thank you so much for that. Lots of love. Bye.